All right, everyone. Do you remember the defund the police movement that the left spawned years ago? And it was a real movement. I like how in retrospect they realized, oh shit, this was a bad idea. Crime is rising, people are pissed at us, and they're not generally receptive to the message of, hey, let's not have cops around to protect our property, while also passing laws making it impossible for you to do it yourself in many cases. You'll notice that there is a very, very fine overlap, almost 100%, between areas that did the defund the police thing and areas that will prosecute you for defending yourself or your property or those around you. I've seen many such cases. Daniel Perry. Anyway, Burlington, Vermont, the only real city in my home state here in Vermont, has been overrun. It fell prey to the police defunding movement. They removed, age-old murals that actually look nice with like George Floyd woke bullshit. They fly the BLM flag at UVM and all of the other trappings of what you would conceive of as a far-left community. This is why Burlington has, by the way, many problems. They decided to do the defund the police thing, and so they foreshortened the number of officers in the Burlington area from roughly 100 to about 70. They're not even at that 70 or 75, actually. They're about 10 officers shy of that because nobody wants to sign up. I wonder why. When you stretch the resources thin and you make it clear that if the officers actually do their fucking job that they're probably going to go to prison, why would you want to sign up? I can't imagine why anyone would want to serve as a Burlington police officer. Here in Rutland, we did it a little bit differently. We didn't have a defund the police movement, and the state police are quartered nearby, literally within a stone's throw of here, along with a military base, actually, a National Guard mustering point, etc., etc. We're on the good part of the grid, by the way. There's an advantage to being in this neighborhood. We're on the same part of the grid as the water company, the electric company, a military installation, and the state police. They do prioritize this area in the town of Rutland for restoration when there's an ice storm or something like that, for which I am very, very thankful. There are niche benefits of being here in the Chisana region, or over on Sanborn. Oh, you should see, it's miraculous how quickly they get it hooked back up. Thank you to the town of Rutland, by the way. You generally do a really good job. I gotta say, their efficiency is definitely higher than most parts of Vermont. Just saying, I'm blessed to be in my particular location in many ways. But Burlington is getting what it fucking deserves. All of a sudden, there's a big stink, oh my god, crime is rising. There's illegals and homelessness and muggings and shootings. Violent crime up 400%, by the way. Decade over decade, I believe it was. Burlington, 10 years ago. I'm going to tell my own anecdotal story, and there are other people. There's another YouTuber, I can't remember the username. He's a resident of Burlington, and he's made a number of videos actually documenting the decline of Burlington. 10, 15 years ago, Burlington was considered one of the nicest little cities in all of the United States. It won awards and plaudits from all over the place. People would come to Burlington. They'd go to Cherry Street. They'd go to Church Street. They'd do a bar crawl on Pearl Street, maybe, depending on what they're into. And it's scenic. There are a lot of parks. There's UVM. It is a beautiful campus, admittedly. I went to UVM for years. I don't regret it. I had a bunch of debt from it, but it was worth it in the long run for some of the courses that I took. Barbara Saylor, by the way, I think still works there. She is probably the most intelligent person that I've ever actually met. She did studies in religion and history, mainly. She could rattle off facts, both current and ancient, interchangeably, synthesize them together. She was a walking goddamn encyclopedia. I hope that she's still there. She was a sort of a cool old hippie lady. Like, if you went up to her office, she had, like, booze bottles, empty liquor bottles all over the wall. It's clear that she liked to party back in the day, probably still does. Goddamn walking encyclopedia. IQ's gotta be at least in the 200 range. She knew everything about ancient history. I digress, but I just wanted to give her an honorable mention as probably the best professor that I've ever had. Also one of the most helpful. She was great. she even looked the part of like the old hippie lady. Like you can imagine, she slams down that bottle of whiskey and then she just starts reading about the Roman Empire over a cup of tea. Really interesting lady. I had a lot of good professors there, admittedly. Most of them did a very good job. Faculty, not necessarily so good, but the professors themselves were. But Burlington is a city in decline, UVM standards aside, and general scenicness aside in Burlington. It used to be conceived of as very safe. Like when I went to UVM, this is, early 2010s, late 2000s. I would go out in the middle of the night, wander around on Pearl Street, I'd go up to the graveyard, I'd go down into the center of action, maybe I'd have a sandwich or something, order a pizza, and you felt safe. No matter where in the city you went, you felt safe. It no longer feels that way. You don't even need to walk around the city. Just from the road you can tell it has changed fundamentally. And part of it is because of the defund the police bullshit. Now, I am no thin blue liner. When police do act with aggression, when they act with undue force, when there is corruption, when drugs go missing from lockup and things like that, I believe in accountability. I believe in firing those that are corrupt and preferably uplifting those that are doing a good job. Instead, we seem to have the opposite mentality where we simply foreshorten the police department, forcing out the people that are trying to do their jobs because they don't want to get sued. They don't want to get put in prison because they put somebody in a headlock who's waving a gun around. Meanwhile, the corrupt bad apples are still on the force. And this doesn't work. It's been tried in multiple urban settings across the United States. It has resulted in rampant crime, vandalism, property damage, abductions, drug sales, and I don't mean, soft drugs. Nobody cares if you smoke the dime bag, but crack and meth and fentanyl and things like that. It's resulted in a look the other way policy for many crimes. This is why, gun rights are important, because when the police are 20 minutes away, I'm, 2 seconds away from unloading on somebody if I need to. This is why self-defense should be considered one of the ultimate ingrained facets of American culture. In places like Burlington, you get it backwards, though. If you defend yourself, you get prosecuted, and the cops aren't going to show up at all. 20 minutes away? Haha, try several hours away. Well, I'm hoping that the person that's currently trying to break into your home with a butcher's knife and duct tape is really frail. So they can't really, they're trying to kick down your door, but it's going to take them a while. The police will show up and give them a strongly worded message or something like that. It's undoable. Now the people of Burlington are all up in arms. Oh my God, there's like homeless people everywhere and beggars on the streets and muggings and shootings and all these things and drugs everywhere. My kid he's addicted to fentanyl and 20 other substances. What gives? You voted for it. You're getting what you fucking deserve. You don't need to be a thin blue liner and be like, ooh, yeah, for the cops. Yeah, I'm the best buddy of every sheriff in town. To understand that there are police that are trying to do their job and you're not giving them the resources to do that. What we need is better police transparency and accountability, and the rest will sort itself out. I personally believe that all police should be elected officials too. I believe in a sheriff-only system. Metro forces tend to be the problem. Small-town cops, like here in Rutland, the Rutland PD gets a bad reputation. I've never had a negative interaction with them myself. They seem to be very respectable individuals. Maybe not quite so much in Burlington. They do it a little bit differently. I believe in mostly a sheriff's model where people are effectively elected and then they deputize other people. The idea is, you've elected this person, you trust their judgment, so they deputize a couple of people, and those are the sheriff's deputies. Moving to a sheriff's-only system makes more sense. It's more efficient. Sheriffs tend to be more accountable to the communities. They tend to live in them. Or sometimes Metro Police, they live outside of the community that they're policing. That's problem number one. Problem number two, it runs afoul of more bureaucracy. Yes, that's a problem. Liberals have this weird conception that, like the small town mentality, you get the sheriff and a couple of people, well, they're corrupt. They're taking bribes, blackmailing people. The sheriff is keeping tabs on his ex that he's obsessed with and stuff like that. It's a suspenders snapper mentality. They go out into their tobacco field and then they look for ways to grind a black man down or something like that. It's not the way that it works. Quite the opposite. The Metro forces are the ones that usually use undue force. They're the ones that are responsible for that 9 times out of 10. It's not the stadies. It's not the sheriffs. It's the Metro forces. Especially in urban settings. You don't have that same problem to the same extent in a small town like Rutland or Bennington or Brattleboro. Well, maybe Brattleboro. They've had some problems too. But it's places like Burlington, cities, actual metropolitan areas of note. They've actually got a real airport now. Back in the day, anything bigger than an Embraer couldn't land on the runway. Now you can get a 747 touching down, actually. They've massively expanded, by the way. Burlington Airport, one of the most efficient and clean airports I've ever been in. For its size, it should be. But Burlington's getting what it deserves, fundamentally. You voted to defund the police. You voted for leftoids that hate the police. Lock, stock, and barrel. Doesn't matter if the cop is corrupt or if they're doing their job. They genuinely care about their family, their community, and the city in general. You just chose to slash their budget massively and reduce them by a third. Well, no shit. If the city is growing, you're going to need more cops now, aren't you? Now, you can replace it with an elected sheriff system. That's great. Have more stadies on duty, whatever the case may be. Perfectly fine. But you do actually need LEOs. Believe it or not. Yes, I say this as a classical liberal. I don't want to be shaken down either by a cop. But there are plenty of people that are trying to do their jobs. They're not harassing you. They're not going to bust you for your fucking dime bag. They'll look the other way. Yeah, it's legal in Vermont anyway, so nobody cares. They're trying to do their job, and they're not being enabled to do so. What we should be doing is do a review. Here's a list of the cops that there's no complaints about them. They're doing their job. They seem like good people. Increase their pay. And get more of them on board, by the way. And then shit can the ones that aren't doing their jobs. But make it clear that insofar as they are doing their job properly, they're being respectful, they're doing their job in the right way, they should not be shit on. They should not be, they shouldn't have beer cans thrown at them by unruly mobs of Antifa members and crap like that. Otherwise, every person that's not corrupt, they're not going to join the police. You're only going to get the bad apples that join them. Hey, man, I can't wait to crack some skulls. You have the Punisher tattoo and stuff like that. That's who you're going to get as your police. The leftoids have made the problem worse on both ends. An increase in crime and an increase in corruption at the same goddamn time. They found a way, as they usually do, to ruin everything. That's about all. Peace out.